Three. Hello and welcome everyone on another special video conversations on Awaz-e-Haqiqat, which translates to the voice of truth. I'm your host, Chris Malika Bhadra, and depending on whichever part of the world you're watching us from, as you can see on my panel, I'm joined by three very special prolific guests, and the topic that we will be delving deep into is consent. The idea of consent, what happens when consent is provided, not provided. It's a very deep topic, and I've been asked by a few people to kind of talk about it, and I'm so thankful these wonderful people agreed to be on this conversation. But before I formally introduce my guest to all of you, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we are meeting. I'm actually meeting them tonight. I am coming from the land of the people, land of the Kulin Nation, and I would also like to extend my respect to the elders, past, present, and emerging. As you can see on my screen, I am joined by Antara Roy Chaudhary. Antara was born and brought up in Calcutta, Kolkata now, and wanted to pursue her career as a journalist. However, she ended up as a banker, and since past 17 years, she is an investment banker to be specific, and she truly enjoys her job. She also loves music and solo travel. Thank you for joining me, Antara.
Thank you.
Rahul Ram is a musician. He's been performing with the band Indian Ocean for the last 35 years. He is also a part of the stand-up comedy and social commentary trio Aisi Taisi Democracy. Very good evening, Rahul. Thank you for joining me once again.
Thank you. Good evening.
Thank you. And lastly, Bodhisatwa Ghosh is the business head and strategy planning and overseeing operations for existing portfolio. This includes arriving at communication strategy from category, consumer, and competition scans and creating core messages that would build brand salience and create more engagement from the tactical perspective. Some of the brands that he's worked and is working with include the Telegraph, Berger Paints, Spencer's Retail and Fashion, Dream Bakes, and Black Tiger Series. Thank you, Bodhi, for joining me tonight. Bodhi, your volume. We can't hear you.
Thank you so much.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I really wanted to thank all of you because this topic that we're going to be talking about is very important, critical, and some of the cases that have recently come up, I think this is the time more than ever that we need to talk about consent. What actually happens in consent? Is it really a gray area that I've been told that more than often is? So I'll straight away jump into the first question, which is, how do we initiate conversation about consent in a relationship? And why is consent important for safe sexual activity and healthy relationships? Antara, I'll start with you first, and then I'll go across the table.
Okay. Why is it important? I'll say it is the most important in sexual activity in first place. And it is important because, for any healthy relationship, where to avoid the risk of abuse. I'll say risk of abuse. I'll say why. Because there are instances we have found where people are saying we did not even understand that was not consensual. Having said that, to avoid abuse and the risk of abuse also, consent is the most important. And I think, having a conversation clearly, openly will lead to a consensual sexual relationship, which is a must. So that's how I feel.
Thank you. Thanks, Antara. Rahul, on to you. How do you initiate that conversation?
All right. So I just want to go back a little bit in time and say that consent was not even part of the conversation a few decades ago, by and large, in India. Let me be kind of traditional, say, take marriages, right? It was assumed that when you are married, there is always consent is written into.
Right.
That by and large, and this applies definitely more to men, that men would assume that their wives would be available for sexual activity whenever they so desired, right?
Yeah.
So there was no concept of consent. There was only bewilderment that there can be a problem with this. As we moved on in time, people started saying, "Arey, ye kya hai? Maine to shaadi kar li." I'm sorry, I'm speaking Hindi, but what is this? We are married, so therefore it's natural. And women, frankly, did not have a voice. But women have their own ways of doing things. they would express lack of consent in various ways, which would be interpreted with violence very often, and enforced sexual activity, and then sometimes with bafflement and bewilderment, men not understanding why is there a problem.
Yeah.
And women were not taught before they were married that there is a notion of consent. There was no notion, frankly, in our traditional
yes,
setup. It was not. It was just assumed that this is what you are. You are there as a person who can be asked to have sex at any time, and it is your duty to agree to it.
Yes.
We've moved a long way on that, especially in, I would say, upper class and upper middle class India. Maybe not so much in rural India, definitely. But like Antara said, the more you think about it, any meaningful relationship has to have consent built into it right from the beginning.
Okay.
It's going to be a struggle in India to get there.
All right. Okay. Thanks, Rahul. I'm picking up words from what you're saying because I'm going to come back to that discussion, because every word that goes into this discussion will open up a Pandora's box, I think. Bodhi, you've heard the other two people speak. What are your thoughts on how important is consent and how to kind of start that whole discourse around
Okay, I am in complete agreement with both Rahul and Antara. What I mean here is the concept of the word consent has also evolved over the last couple of years.
Okay.
A maximum, I would say, a decade. Prior to that, while the word existed in our dictionary, it was just a synonym of the word permission. And when we speak of consent, yes, we will definitely come to the sexual aspect of it. Because that's the core core of the discussion today. But consent in a marital space or even a partnership space, I think it is still very, very loosely. I mean, the concept is still not quite gone in. Whenever in a partnership, it's very common, and I'm not being gender specific here. It's very common for a man in the relationship to check his partner's mobile phone without thinking that that is something which is not right. They're not getting to a sexual act for sure, but that might give the other person a sense of violation. Similarly, there are a lot of homemakers with no denigration, with no disrespect towards any homemakers. All I'm trying to say, there are many homemakers who might not be working, and it's a common practice, and it's discussed among homemakers that I save money by stealing from my husband's purse. It's something as if it's something very normal. So what I'm necessarily saying is that the beginning should be with the understanding of the need of having that conversation. Even now, a lot of us don't believe. I mean, honestly, some people, the middle class intelligentsia is honestly a minority. Okay, if you scratch the surface, a little, you would see people around us in our socioeconomic strata still believe. I mean, I have a lot of women friends who say that, see, most of the time I fake orgasms. I mean, they don't even tell their partners that they have not enjoyed the entire sex. So it has become so acceptable over the years. So I think it has to begin with the I mean, we need to educate, that we need to at least have this conversation. So that's where I believe it needs to start.
Right. Thanks, Bodhi.
And how it needs to go in, I think it's as Antara said, it is as important and as basic as showing appreciation towards your relationship. I mean, if you respect your partner, even if it's a one night stand, if you want that one night stand to be, to have a good, to leave a good memory behind, then you should actually have a discussion and make it comfortable for both, and that's exactly where the need for consent is.
Absolutely. Thanks. All of you, is that the conversation needs to be had, but somewhere we are not having the conversation, or there is not enough awareness. Now, my next question, which is not initially in the list, but I want to ask is, why are we not having the conversation? It's the 21st century. 2024, most of us are educated, or I would like to believe we are. Why are we not having the education? What are the obstacles that kind of prevent a couple or whosoever is in that room to have that conversation? Rahul, this time I'll start with you.
All right. Well, you know, I must quote my friend Sanjay Rajora on this. Because he has this beautiful thing where, you know, he says, you know, at a party, this guy starts hitting on a woman.
Mm-hmm.
And when asked why, he says, wo signal de rahi thi.
Mm.
Huh? And Rajora says, are you a chimgadad? Are you a bat? That, you know, you get these signals.
Yes.
So it begins even there. How do you even approach somebody? How does consent, you know, I mean, like very often just hitting on somebody without consent is an act of kind of violence, I would say. But how do you begin? How do you even move from a casual conversation to something that may lead further?
Yeah.
You can't consent into it right in the beginning because we are nowhere close to consent, right? And by the time things move on, they acquire their own momentum and they acquire things which uske beech mein suddenly consent bolna seems, I think, like a weird space. So it's a procedural problem as well. At which point does consent come in?
Okay.
You know, you got along, things are going swimmingly well. You're at a point where you think you're going to initiate a sexual encounter, let's say. I'm not talking about marriages. I'm talking about, let's say, non-marriage situations. Yeah. At which point, if you suddenly say, are you consenting to what we are doing right now? Okay. For most people, I think would be like, am I jeopardizing my chances at this point? I'm sorry, I'm being very frank here.
That's okay.
That if I suddenly say, okay, everything is going well, we're about to start something sexual, and then I stop and say, listen, we're going to start this. Are you okay? At which point, you might think the person might say, oh, this guy is asking this question at this point. And then, khus, kadam, ghar. Okay. So there is a problem at some point in where exactly, at which point do you bring in this topic of consent? Even during the sexual act, there is consent, right? I've been in situations where you're practically about to start having sex and the person changes their mind. And which is completely their right. And even after consent, you can stop consent. So consent, that way, is a kind of slippery slope.
Continuous process.
The next day, if somebody regrets having done what they've done, they might say, "Arey, there was no consent." So there is a whole range of things that happens, which is why I think consent is such a difficult topic.
Fair. Rahul, Bodhi, what is your thought on why don't we have, what's stopping us from having that discussion?
I have a slightly different take to it. For me, it comes down to the basic gender politics as to how, as a society, we bring up a boy as opposed to bring up a girl, right? For me, it is a man doesn't have that conversation because he feels that if he has gone to a certain extent with his partner, asking for consent is not even necessary. He's man enough. So it's perfectly fine. And if he's asking for consent, that I won't say that's kind of, I'm not saying that he believes that it's sissy, but you know, he somewhere believes that making that bold move is what this woman is actually desiring. That's his assumption. But you know, he has been fed that sense of toxic machismo, which for him is very difficult to come out of, because that's not That's our upbringing.
Mm.
And the upbringing of a woman is just the opposite. She has to be coy. She has to be demure. I mean, you know, there is a sexual play there as well.
Mm.
So that is possibly another reason why that conversation is not happening.
Okay. Thanks, Bodhi. Antara, you've heard the men. Now, what's your thought on why aren't we having the conversation?
I think the conversation can be difficult at times. So I will just say a normal story which I read in internet few years back, I remember, where this she's a mother from probably US, I remember. She was saying, I was watching a movie, Snow White, along with my 6-year-old son. So where the prince came and everything, he suddenly kissed the princess.
Yeah.
So my son said, oh my God, he kissed the princess. Then I said, yeah, because to wake her up. And he said, but mom, he has to ask for permission. He did without that. So the mother said, I think I'm going in the right track. My son, my 6-year-old, understood that you need to ask first.
Yeah.
And if she's not in a position where she is unconscious, in that case, he will take it as no.
Yeah.
You'll have to take it as no, because she's not in the position to say yes either. So that is the first thing. Now, coming back, this is a very harmless fairy tale I was talking about. But it is from our childhood also. Probably we have seen such things and understood such things where it is not important to ask for consent. So we go through, this is a very harmless story. I come back again. I'm not against this kind of stories. But then where is the concept of consent there?
Yeah.
It's not there from the childhood, and it can be difficult, since I'm talking about this exactly. What I have said earlier also, that if someone is drunk or drugged, not conscious, not in a position to give you consent, you'll have to read the soul, read the mind, and read the body language that it is a no.
Yeah.
So verbal consent, I mean, many a times it happens, we are not giving a very verbal communication and saying yes or no, but then even the body will say yes or no. So listening to the body, the mind, facial expressions, body language, this always will give you the consent, either yes. If it is no, you'll have to understand. It's deep, but you will have to understand.
Okay. Now I'm playing the devil's advocate, and I have two questions for you all, right? First is, Rahul, you mentioned that, okay, it might be different when it's a marital relationship, that discussion might look different. Why is it different if it's a marital? Why for a married couple? That's my first question. And the second is what, Antara, you mentioned, that read the body, read the soul, right? Your body is telling me that you don't want it, but I'm craving for it. Now, what do I do? So two questions clubbed into one. This time, Bodhi, I'll go with you first.
So the two questions clubbed into one. But could you repeat the question?
Yeah. So the first question is,
I understood the first one and the second question, but together, club together.
You answer however you feel like. But these two questions are.
First of all, I'm not married, but still I'll try to answer that. I think.
But you need to pick up
So I'm not married, so I don't know whether I'm the right person to answer that. However, my perception is that unfortunately in a marriage, a lot of things are taken for granted. It's expected that a woman in a marriage would play a certain role. A man would play a certain role. The man by default would be the provider. The woman would take care of the household. Okay, though they might sound extremely hackneyed, extremely regressive, but unfortunately, a lot of the system still operates on those beliefs, right? So therefore, there's a lot of adjustment that keeps on happening. So therefore, that conversation, so therefore, it's very different when a couple is married as opposed to when two individuals meet, or they're in a relationship, whether in a relationship or not in a relationship, two individuals who are more like equals are deciding to engage in a sexual activity. There possibly a chance of a communication is more as opposed to a marital relationship, because everything is taken for granted there. it might sound absolutely obnoxious, absolutely crude, absolutely vulgar, but the reality, Chris, is a woman possibly believe that it's a responsibility of a man to constantly provide, irrespective of whether she's working or how much she's earning. Similarly, a man believes that if I am constantly feeding my wife and taking care of her, it's my right to possibly rape her every night. That's the crude reality, but that's a reality. I'm sorry, Antara, you might totally disagree.
No.
But
I completely
I think,
agree. That's the socio-economic structure we have.
yeah,
Very unfortunate, but true. We are conditioned by this kind of things where we know this is bound to happen. I mean, the man is bound to. I mean, he's supposed to earn, and no matter what. But you, as a woman, cannot say no to him, in case he needs sex. So that is the concept of the country and many other countries. Marriage, yes, marital relationship. Because I think marriage, I don't know why, but it is a belief that marriage is giving you the license that you can perform the act without your partner's consent at any point of time. I will say mostly this is for the women. I mean against the women.
Yeah.
So mostly, I will not really. I mean, it can be otherwise also, but then mostly it's that. So that is how we are conditioned. We are believing, and it's running. That's unfortunate, but true.
No, it is. I agree. But okay, I'll have another question. I'll come back to you later. Rahul, your thoughts on how is it different in a marriage, and what to do if I'm craving and you don't want it?
Precisely. So, I will say that I was in a marriage where for years my wife supported me. Actually. She used to earn way more than me. And so that standard thing of husband provider, therefore, this was not in place. We had been going on for 8 years before we got married. So a lot of this was taken for granted. Now, kya hota hai? That everybody goes through cycles of desire and non-desire. Very often your work and your other stresses can completely kill your sexual desire.
Yeah.
While that may not be the case for your partner. Okay. So in some cases, let's say, I'm exhausted, I've fallen asleep, my wife is horny, she comes in and wants to have sex with me. And so she has to wake me up. She has to make some kind of move so that I know what's going on. And then partly, sometimes I might respond, sometimes I might say, yaar, sone de, And the same applies both ways. Wife is exhausted, I come back, I would love to have sex. So I kind of, however it is that you initiate, you touch or you cuddle or you kiss. And the response, that old joke, wo headache wala joke jo hai, which all men are very familiar with. So it's entirely up to her. And she sometimes says yes and she sometimes says no. And you have to believe that very often you say yes because you realize the other person's needs. You may not be in the mood, but you're like, yeah, chalo, okay, fine, And so that is I think, the reality of a lot of educated married people's lives, where it's not that, one is a bread earner and one's job is to just provide all other needs of the person. Which is very different from initial sexual encounter, obviously, because you've reached that space together. And from, let's say, a partnership, a relationship where shadi nahi hai. So it's not, shadi we used to call socially sanctioned sex.
Yes.
So it's not socially sanctioned, but the same stresses, the same exhaustions, the same cycles of desire and non-desire are there. I think there is a fallacy that men are constantly horny. I'm sorry, but there are points where I have been so exhausted that the last thing I want to do is to have sex. Okay? I would rather sleep. There are even points where a man might say, man, I'll just jerk off and go to sleep. Instead of, having to then have a long, So this happens on both sides of the fence, at least in, like Bodhi pointed out, middle class intelligentsia, like you're saying. I don't belong to the upper class, so I have no idea of what happens there. And interestingly enough, I have conversations, or my wife and I have conversations with our household help, who belong very much to lower middle class, I would say. They're not poverty, they're lower middle class. And even there, it's interesting that there is an unspoken, it's not always this thing that I'm sorry, Bodhi, that I'm allowed to rape my wife every night. Ye nahi hai. Ye actually hota nahi hai, because this is not the way nowadays, at least, things can function. They don't function like that. So there is some element of consent, but there is also some element of, chal yaar, he wants it, so let me do it. There is, of course, like we've discussed before, the fact that for a woman to initiate sex in our social setup requires a lot of confidence on the part of the woman. Okay, it's not easy, and men are more used to rejection than women are, because men keep hitting on women much more often than women keep hitting on men. So the rejection rate, you're used to it. Ki, haan, hota hai. Okay. Whereas, I mean, I used to have this thinking, I think if I am wanting to have sex with somebody and I go to a bar, the chances of my ending up having sex is way lower than almost any woman walking into a bar and initiating a sexual conversation. The chances are that the woman will succeed and the man will not succeed. Yeah, I'm sorry, but this is the reality that I seem to have experienced. I don't know how you ladies, how you people think about what I'm saying.
I don't drink, so I've never been to a bar. So I don't.
I agree with Rahul. I totally agree with Rahul. I just have one point to make. When
Sure.
I did put it a little crudely, what I meant by I have the right to rape my wife, it comes from that thought process, as Rahul said, that men do face way more rejection from from their objects of desire than a woman would. But that is possibly one of the reason when they get married, it is a sanction. So there is that fear of rejection is not there. And also, Rahul, I don't know, but I strongly have a feeling, I admit that I don't have any empirical data to substantiate that, but whatever little conversations I've had, whatever little bit of dipsticks that I have done, I have figured that within many households, women still do not do not stop their husband when they are initiating a sexual act. So that concept of me saying no to my husband is somewhere not still very prevalent, unless you belong to a certain, so I must say, by economic class, I'm in a social class. You have a certain education, certain exposure, and maybe some amount of financial independence. I'm not too sure, data wise, I'm not too sure how many women today are married women today are in a position to say no to their husbands, asking them for sex. That's what I broadly meant.
Yeah. I didn't want to, probably this is a separate discourse altogether, but since this has got up, I'll quickly touch on it. So, in India, marital rape is not criminalized. And sometimes lack of consent, or this gray line, as we like to call it, might lead to that. How dare you say no? Or that anger, alcohol, for one reason, pornography, various reasons, might lead to raping your partner. And I'm going gender neutral, otherwise people will say, oh, you always talk about women, men also get raped. Let's assume for a second it happens gender neutrally. How do you guys think consent plays out when a partner is that angered that he wants to just, assault the other partner? And for our audience, trigger warning, this discussion might get a bit sensitive and heavy. If you want to step away, take care of your mental health, please do so, because we're talking about certain very sensitive issues. Antra, I'll start with you first. That marital rape, how dangerous can it be when the partner is not okay to hear a no?
How dangerous it can be is the question.
Yes.
I mean, it itself is the most dangerous thing that having a sexual act without consent. See, in first place, I'll again say it starts from scratch, and it starts from, I mean, ages back. We have many weird, harmful beliefs in the society.
Yeah.
It starts from there. Like women must be submissive to the male partner for sex. That is that, and in all aspects of their life. It starts from there. B is again, men are expected to experience or I'll say exercise the controlling
Power.
in the family.
Yeah.
In all that male member is always the head of the family. That concept is there, and women cannot definitely deny for sex. That is what we are talking about. So if we wake up in the morning for anything and everything, it is mostly male dominating in the household. We will not really talk about exceptional cases. I understand probably we have been very privileged to have certain we the exception, but the majority is not the exception. Till date, I will say ki if the son grows up, the mother has to listen to him only, because he becomes the head of the family when there is no other male member. So that's the concept. So it starts from there. The son has, I mean, very childhood. We have seen that, and when we grow up, the consent is something. In any case, we are dominating. That's either it's our way or no way. He's learning that. So how do we expect the son will ever understand the concept, respect, understanding the boundaries of your partner,
Yes.
respecting that, handling rejections, understanding rejections. It's okay to be rejected. This kind of things will never come if he is brought up like the way I'm saying. I mean, he has seen from the childhood something very ugly, probably. I mean, I'll say ugly because it seems to be very normal. See, he's the man, so he will definitely be the head of the family. It is so normal to the society, and it's so difficult to make it people understand, though no, it is not always normal. It can be otherwise also.
Yes.
So coming to a sexual activity later, after the days old, whole days, so probably it's under that. I mean, the whole day I was the king, today suddenly I will not be the king. Why? So there is a problem in the grassroots level, I believe.
Yeah.
In the upbringing.
Yeah.
And everything, we are not really teaching the boys to handle rejections, to respect the boundaries of the partner. Any kind of violence you cannot do. Exactly. It's very important for us to make them understand, teach that.
Yeah. No, thanks, Amsa.
Sorry, I'm just going to that. Basically, you're saying social equality between the genders.
Of course.
Till that is achieved, this concept of sexual equality and consent is a much later.
Yes.
पहले social equality आएगा, तभी ये notion आएगा.
Yeah.
That, that this exists and this is real and this is meaningful. On the other hand, I'll give you, just to bring you a touch of brevity into this very serious topic, you have to look at my all boys schools WhatsApp group, okay, which is full of men complaining that their wives don't have sex with them. Okay, and I think the older you get in a marriage, the more confidence a woman has to be able to say, buzz off. And I've seen this even with my own relatives, that, at beyond a certain age, I would have my Shejumami saying, he looked at Shatenar Parayachi. I mean, the language changes. That the whole notion of I must be subservient and all that does change with age and does change with time. However, by and large, what Antara and Bodhisatwa is saying is true. That till there is, from the beginning, it begins with your kids and how you teach your kids and how you talk about it and how this privileged maledom has to be taken away. The privilege that is assumed the way boys are brought up by their families, not just their immediate parents, but the whole, the whole extended family. I'll tell you small things like the boy gets to sit in the front seat, never the girl. When a family is driving out, very often you will see the young boy sitting in the front seat. Rarely do you see the young girl sitting, if there are, one male, one female. It starts from there. Way back, this notion of privilege and the boy is a privilege thing. The whole notion of, the son desire, that we have that skewed sexual ratio. The notion, in Hindi, औरत तो पराई धन होती, लड़की तो पराई धन होती है. All that is possibly pre-talking about consent. And social change is glacial. It happens at a much slower rate than, say, other changes. For example, like cell phone aa gaya sabke paas, na? Now sabzi wala also hai. So your technological changes do not are far outstrip the social changes in anything. I'll give you an example of a film called Masan. I don't know if you watched it. But it begins with a young woman watching porn in Banaras. And then she goes off to an assignation. I'm calling it assignation because that's the way we looked at, with a young man in order to explore sex. Now, I asked the bakers, I've done music for the film, so, so I asked the bakers that, does this happen? And they said, you'd be surprised how often this does happen. That now, because the internet has exposed you to an entirely different world, you are being able to express things that were not even conceived of as possibilities for a young woman earlier. So a lot of changes. I mean, I don't have grown-up kids, but I have friends, obviously, who have grown-up kids, and the notion of sex is much more prevalent, and young women do not put that burden on sex that used to be there earlier. Like when I was growing up, it was, we women only sleep with men we love. Men sleep with everybody. Used to be the standard female statement. And I used to wonder, that who are those women that these men sleep with? Is there a bimodal distribution where 98% do not sleep and 2% sleep with everybody? Then introduce me to those 2%. That was a joke that we used to have.
Yeah.
But it was social conditioning. It happens from day one. And I'm quite impressed to see how it's changing amongst young people in India. It is changing, and hopefully that will bring in this notion of concept in a much stronger way and easier way and faster way than the slow social change.
Rahul, I'll just say one thing. We are talking about the society where people are privileged to have certain level of education. So if we are going to somewhere where that kind of education is not there, where the society believes that, men has the right to discipline the women through a sexual act, where never comes a consent, that is trivial. And I think the percentage of people are more there because the certain level of education has not reached there also. I will really not name the states of our country, but then we know there are places where people discipline their women by rape, and that is definitely a marital rape.
I wanted to bring up Bodhi while you get your speaker up. I wanted to ask that question because my question was that I can't fathom the idea that you say no to me and I start abusing you. So is that how my mindset is played at, that I will use force and anger and assault just because you said no to me? How is that mindset even playing out, right? That leads to rape. And I'm gender neutral at this point of time. Although I know where the statistics is more, but I'll keep it to a gender neutral discussion. Both of you have heard all of us speak. What are your thoughts on that?
So, you know, I mean, I'll tell you about a personal story. In fact, Antor and I are friends, so we know each other personally. So there was this particular get together once. We were there. We were all of a couple, quite a few of our friends were there together, and there was this couple, supposedly well educated, as in both of them are going by the standards of education. Both of them are postgraduates, doing well for themselves, both working, and coming from I would say an upper, considering India, coming from an upper middle class family, as an economically upper middle class.
Right.
So there was this point, and yes, all of us, I mean, why blame all of us? We were having a party, so all of us were slightly inebriated, and there was not even a heated argument as such. There was this point of time where since you're keeping it gender neutral, I'm saying one of the partners felt that the other partner was not giving him enough attention, and from that, this person suddenly goes and slaps the other person. It happens. So, and therefore I agree with Rahul. I agree with Rahul, and slightly on that's exactly where I wanted to butt in. It is very difficult to draw a correlation between education and certain social behavior. It is not the literal education, really. Maybe you would not see a woman, so to say, in a lower middle class household, or so to say, the low, the economically someone who's economically downtrodden, taking so much of violence as maybe someone who is relatively more privileged would, because possibly there's more at stake. So what I'm trying to say, there are multiple dynamics that possibly come into play.
Right. I agree, because I also wanted to highlight that it's not that only the lower rungs of the society face these issues. These issues are prevalent in the upper echelons also. It's just that we don't see them as often, or they are portrayed out in a very different and elite way, something to cover that up. It happens much as in their societies and circles as well. That's what I would like to believe. But moving on from there, Andra, earlier you mentioned, what if a partner is in an alcoholic state, inebriated, right? If that person is unwell or sick, or is unable to verbally say no or a yes. In that situation, if I am that horny partner, how do I draw consent while my partner is unable to verbally give me an answer? Bodhi, I'll start with you this time.
You'll start with me?
Yeah, I mean, start as in just like to hear your thoughts.
I think being drunk can never be, sorry. I think being drunk can never, ever be an excuse, right? So be it in your social space or your personal space or your private spaces. Now, irrespective of how willing or how, what kind of desires I have, there's no way that if the one I am trying to engage with is not interested, there's no way I would not understand. So people who say that they did not understand are lying. It's almost like I mean, I have done it many times. If I've abused, if I got drunk, I got drunk and I shouted at someone. Next day I said, oh, sorry, I didn't really mean to say that. I was a little drunk, so it went out of control. Yeah, maybe there is certain words I used, I might not have used if I was not drunk. But the point is, I did want to say those things. So similarly, if in a sexual act, if it's not that, when the partner is not interested, I do not understand, no matter how drunk I am. And if I do not understand, then I need to be punished for it. As simple as that.
No, but what if the other person is drunk and they're not verbally able to say yes to you? What do you make of
the other person is drunk and they're not being able to say no to me?
Yeah.
Okay, so but I'll understand from their behavior. Right. So if I am not understanding, it's only because I do not want to understand. I mean,
Absolutely.
the other person might not be able to tell me no. The other person might be so drunk that he or she's not in a position to speak.
Yeah.
But bodily, the person will resist.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Right. I mean, there's some gestures which will make me understand that person is not interested. After that, if I go ahead, it is completely my responsibility, and I need to be punished for it. As simple as that. So I need to face the consequences for that. That's what.
Thanks, Bodhi. Thank you. Rahul, your thoughts?
I just wanted to say that in India, that case is going on right now in the court, marital rape. And the central government has said that we cannot entertain the fact that marital rape should be a thing because it would tear the fabric of society apart. That's what they've said. Now, they said the same thing about 377 as well. So it is the fact that governments tend to be, I would say, conventional. So they're following the convention. They're making the case that marital rape is not on the books for us, and that if you do make marital rape illegal, then we will oppose that. That's the official government position as of date, which you guys, I'm sure, are aware of. I just wanted other listeners to know that this is
punishable by law.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So no, that
it's not a criminal activity either.
Right?
No, I've heard that line also that Rahul mentioned, that I think somebody on the higher political structure mentioned that if this comes into play, it will disintegrate the moral fabric of the institution on which marriage is coming.
If so, then let it happen, I believe. If the
exactly,
I'm not going to comment. I'm not going to comment on it because.
No, I know. So, but all I'm trying to say is, I'm not taking any.
If the society is so lame, I think let it break and let it reform. I mean, if people are thinking like this, then I'm saying it will never. We have to break it.
That's the thought process which is propagated by the highest authority, the highest legal authority. I think that itself explains why consent as a word is still so alien.
Yeah.
I mean, if this is the kind of society we live in, what consent are you talking about?
Exactly. So we are not even, we don't care about the consent basically. So marital rape is anytime.
I think what they're saying is we are scared of the consequences.
Oh my God.
That's what they're saying. We're scared of the consequences of making same gender sex legal. We are scared of the consequences of allowing same-sex couples to adopt children, which played out in the US as well. This is not something that we are facing for the first time. This has happened across the world in different societies in different ways, right? Since we're Indians, we are focused more on what is happening in our society. But the same thing has happened everywhere. You cannot even imagine having this conversation in Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to bring in political or to bring in a regional thing, but it is something that is slowly happening in different parts of the world. We could not have imagined decriminalization of same-gender sex that has been achieved in India thanks to stellar work over the last 2 decades by so many people. We have to be grateful that marital rape has become something that the Supreme Court has taken up, and that the government is forced to have some kind of response to this, because it was not even on the cards. It's happening, but it's happening slowly. And in the meanwhile, we guys have to deal with the reality of what is going on before there is any such thing. Just making something illegal is not going to make it stop.
But Rahul, I'm really sorry to say that, isn't it like that, whatever is going wrong with our society, can we say that, just imagine what's happening in Afghanistan. But point is, we're not staying in Afghanistan, right? I mean, we need to look into our society and stand for what is wrong. The verdict of the Supreme Court is wrong. We need to stand in favor of 377. We need, if marital rape or whatever, I mean, sex without consent within a marital structure is not right, we need to take a stand about it. Just because it's not happening in other countries, other more regressive countries, doesn't mean that we also fall into the same rut. That's my only submission here. That
but that's not what I meant. I'm just saying that these things are happening at different speeds in different parts of the world. But the fact that they are happening is in itself a positive move.
true.
That's what I'm saying. I'm not saying our society is great because we are better than somebody who's worse than us. Obviously not. We don't look at the worst case example to look at yourself. You have to look at yourself with the mirror first. You have to analyze the things that are wrong with your society, and you have to move to make things better, right? And better now is, again, a construct. What is better for me may not be better for my neighbor. So even better is something that, but we're looking at more equal gender relationships. I think that's where we're coming from, and that's going to be a work in progress. I mean, look, even now, economic parity in equal paying, equal stature jobs does not happen in the West. There is still a lag for all the moves, positive, gender positive things, equality. It takes a long time. Men's tennis circuit versus women's tennis circuit. It is amazing that in India, for example, they've decided to give the same money to the women's cricket team and the men's cricket team. That is a huge thing. You know, they're happening. But sexual consent, oh boy, long way away.
Yeah, I'm mindful of the time, so I'll try to kind of wrap up. Although these conversations can't be wrapped up per se, we need to have these periodically, but just for the sake of tonight and everybody's time. One last question that I would like to ask all of you is, all of these difficult situations you've talked about, the partner is ill, alcohol, drunk, inebriated, not interested, married. How do I seek consent then? How do I just simply ask? Can I simply ask? Or is it really a gray zone that we're all lurking in? Antra, I'll start with you this time.
I think it's better to have a conversation. Conversation helps. So conversation is, by conversation, I really mean verbally. If not verbal, again, I'll say even what I have said already, the body talks. So if you're starting an act, if there is some kind of refusal, some kind of resistance, no eye contact, or somebody's scared, so you have to understand there is no consent. It's a no. It's a clear no from the person. So I believe in you have to respect that. We have to respect that. That's how it is for me. That's how I feel it should be. So that's, if we start looking at it, we can at least make a better world for tomorrow.
Thanks. And for the next generation, as Rahul also mentioned.
Of course.
Bodhi, coming to you, how do I seek consent? Ask for it, maybe.
Best thing is to ask. I think the best thing is to ask, especially when you are in doubt, okay? Because signs can be missed depending on individual, depending on the kind of desire that you have, as independent desires of the individuals, right? So, and so you know, so the gestures of willingness to a particular intimacy can also have a this far no further line. I mean, I might be engaged in a certain act and my partner might be interested till a certain point, but beyond that, my partner might not be interested. So while my asking apparently might seem stupid, because the concept, so to say, is, as I said, is relatively new, and I risk being perceived as, you know, a little dumb but I would rather be dumb. I think it's important for people to know that they'd rather be dumb and gentle than be over smart and be behind bars for a certain and be behind bars for the rest of their life for a certain for violating someone.
Assuming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks, Bodhi. Rahul?
Yeah, if both people are drunk, then it's a very different situation because nobody knows what the other person is doing. Which I have seen happening on a number of occasions, that two drunk people stagger off into some room somewhere. And but if I am wanting to have sexual relationship with somebody who is ill or drunk, it's not even going to be fun. Just stop, guys. There's no pleasure in this. You should not even respect has to be at the root of it all. You're drunk, okay, I'm horny, I find you very attractive, but you're drunk. You're in no position to say yes or no to me. You're ill, the last thing you want is somebody jumping on you, So maybe put yourself into the other person's head. If that's the possibility, that's the way to explore it.
Right.
What if I were them? How would I feel if this was done to me at this point? That could be a way of sorting it out in your head, so that you don't even ask. If somebody is very drunk and incapable of even walking, who knows whether they want to have sex or not? They may not even be capable of saying yes or no. Think of yourself, if I am so drunk that I don't know what I'm doing, would I want to have sex? I would rather probably not. I would probably just go to sleep,
Right.
So if I'm ill, just leave me alone, please. Just please don't bother me. So put yourself into the other person's mind if that's possible. And I think that would solve a lot of these.
Thanks. In the end of every conversation, I usually ask the guest to leave a message for our audience, but this time I just thought of doing it slightly differently. I'll ask the men to leave a message for the women, and Antara, I'll ask you to leave a message for the men. So, Bodhi, I'll start with you. What would be your one-liner message on consent for the women? For women.
I would not have any message on consent for the women. I would tell them that, work towards a gender-neutral society.
Yeah.
Which is where you and your partner are absolutely the same platform. I think Rahul gave a brilliant example when he was telling us about his life and how in the initial days his wife was the one who was supporting, who took care of the house, in the sense took care of was the supposed provider, so to say.
Yeah.
Right. I'm not too sure how many women today would actually do that. It's very unfortunate, but many women today, no matter how liberated they are, they would, when they get married, they would want their partner to be at least better settled or earn more money than, in career, be better settled than they are. It is again a construct. So my message to women would be that please work towards really a gender neutral society where you are equal to your partner. So and all the rest of the things will follow.
I will tend to disagree on you. You said most women.
Sure.
Most of us, we are willing to take partners who are maybe not higher than us, equal to us or lesser, as long as they are responsible humans. But male ego plays there. But I think that's a conversation for a second time. We can't bring everything.
Sure.
Rahul, your one-liner message about consent to women out there.
Teach your partners no means no.
Thank you. Short and sweet. Antara, your message to the men.
Be respectful. At times, asking for consent, having a conversation of consent, if you find it not masculine enough, trust me, it will be the most masculine one if you try it. Please be respectful towards your partner if they say no or yes. And yes, please be respectful. understand the boundaries. These are important. Thank you.
Thank you, all of you. It was very heartwarming. I'm very mindful of time, but so many other things have come up. But thank you so much for this very important conversation. Not a lot of people are willing to come up and talk about their lives on this issue. Rahul, Bodhi, Antara, thank you so much. To our listeners, if you've heard me for the first time, I really hope you've had a lot to take away from all what these people had to say about consent. Bottom line being, please treat a no as a no, maybe is also probably a no to me, and read the body language, what the other person may not be able to convey, but the body always speaks out. And if you've heard me for a while, I hope you like the content. And if you've got any thoughts or feedbacks, even on this video, if you've got a question, we are more than happy to answer. Please reach out to me at awaz-e-haqiqat@gmail.com, or you can reach out to me on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube as well. On that note, thank you so much, everyone. I've taken 1 hour of your busy evenings. Have a great night, and thank you so much again.